Construction, especially in the domestic setting where working in people's homes, is incredibly invasive. Since working with you over the last couple of years, you have an innate ability to placate, diffuse. What was your first life experience that set the stage for how you handle conflict and our project so well?
I can remember a time when I was about 19 years old and there was a relationship breakdown, as in we were together for a long time and the relationship broke down, and I didn't necessarily agree with the reasons, and I remember becoming really angry, so angry. It was rage. It was red mist. You know, you hear about the red mist. That was because I just could not fathom that someone would make me do all this. She just ended it. And the reason we ended it was because I was playing semi-professional football and was going back and forth to Wales. And so I spent a lot of time just on my own, really. And she obviously made new friends, did new things, and eventually decided that I didn't play a part in that life of hers and ended it effectively. And I'd moved my whole life an hour and a half away from where we were living. After that moment, I kind of almost swore to myself that I would never become that angry again. I did not like the feeling of not being in control of my emotions, which hopefully is a positive thing. I think sometimes it can be a negative thing, but generally I think that it's a positive that I can be in control, that I don't get too riled up or angry or, you know, say things that I would later regret. I think that I have a moment where I think about what I'm trying to say, what the implications of what I'm going to say would have on that situation. So I think I'm a bit more measured and try and always be measured in everything. Those moments, you know, there should be an example of an outburst where you need to have those moments. But there's just times where you don't need that. I think it doesn't help the situation. You know, you're not going to go to a peace meeting, are you, in Gaza and all shout at each other and group below the top. You're going to have a meeting that hopefully diplomacy wins and they kind of talk in a level tone and don't get too angry. I mean, but that's how I assume it happens in these meetings, you know. So yeah, that would be really my first recollection of a time where I kind of felt that I had to control my emotions to a sense that I was not going to make any rash decisions or do silly things.
Yeah. So then from that first experience, what other things did you learn to employ through that experience to try and navigate future? What other skills did you use there or experience that were helpful?
So I think, I mean, your whole upbringing and your experiences define you as, or make you the person that you are, don't they? So, you know, I had a very, very loving, very happy upbringing. You know, I was taught hopefully good morals, values, principles by my parents. And then you take them into, as you get older, you know, I played semi-professional football. You're in a team environment, you learn to deal with situations there, whether it be conflict on the pitch, conflict in the training or dressing room. And and each experience you hopefully learn from it. And then fundamentally, you know, I had that moment where I got angry and rage. It was definitely rage. And I kind of think, I'm going to learn from that and never do that again. And then I joined the fire service. Out of that moment, you know, I kind of gave up the football, realized that it's, you know, it wasn't the be all and end all for me. And so I then joined the fire service, and then that brings in a whole new different level of like skills and attributes that you've got to bring, because again, you're in a team environment. You're in an environment where it is high pressure, quick decisions. The decisions that you make could impact your colleagues, the public. You know, the skills that I've learned over time that make me feel that I can bring into other situations. And then I think coming into the construction, you know, I was just working with me and my dad, and obviously we fell out because you do, but it is, you know, we communicated it and we got it back on track pretty quickly. And I worked with guys, and you know, it's like when you've got 30-odd people working, not everyone's going to get on. There's going to be people falling out. There's going to be fallouts with clients and fallouts with architects or difference of opinions, and ultimately we discuss it and we communicate and we talk about it and it gets resolved.
Let's talk about the fire service.
Yeah.
Any particular events that have been really hard to navigate?
In the fire service, you do risk assessments, obviously, in everything you do, but they're measured and they're done within a time relative period. We have a process called dynamic risk assessment, where we make risk assessments, obviously, instantly, you know, like constantly making risk assessments. Whereas dynamic risk assessments, that could be changing every 30 seconds. And so as long as you declare your thinking, legally you're kind of covered yourself effectively. Yeah, we had a house fire a few years back where I was in charge of the incident, and we turned up and obviously all the public going, he's in there, there's someone in there. And so our standard brief is send two breathing apparatus inside the house with a hose drill, try and put the fire out and get the casualties. It's a domestic property. And that's a pretty standard brief. You know, you then get you get your everything, the processes set up to make it safe. And when I went around the back of the house, there was a huge like raging fire going on the back, and it was being wind driven, so it broke into the windows and it was being pushed through from the back to the front. So I had the two guys trying to get in from to the front, and I got to the front and said, why are you not in there yet? And they said, it's too hot, we're getting burnt. And so they were trying their best to get into the fire as best they could. We go into scenarios where it's 1,000 degrees Celsius, like our fire kit's pretty good. So the fact that they were getting burnt as they were trying to get in shows how hot it was. And so I said Oscar offensive, guys trying to get into the property, effectively save a life because we knew someone's in there. And as they were trying to get in, I'm thinking we've got to save this guy's life. But the reality is that there probably wasn't, the window probably closed. But you don't know that, so you still continue as it was. And as the guys were trying to get in, the one at the front was getting burnt because it was so hot, because it was acting like a chimney through the front door. And then the building collapsed in itself, so all the joists burnt through and it collapsed in itself. So we obviously couldn't get into the building. We put the fire out, we stopped it spreading to either side. You know, it was a good stop. This guy was on his own, single, but we go to house fires where you've got parents outside screaming that their kids are inside, or family members, do something. So there's lots of scenarios: car crashes, house fires, river rescues. So it's quite intense. That period, that 20 minutes, that 20 to 30 minutes is quite an intense period of making decisions. And so afterwards you do a debrief, and that's why I think debriefs are really important, because you obviously learn from it. And, I kind of got patted on the fire, so saying you made a really good decision, well done, you did all you could. And then in that meeting I was like, yeah, I get that I just did what anyone else would do, it's a standard brief. But if my guys had managed to get in and that building had collapsed, we've probably talking 2 firefighters potentially dead. And it's a completely different conversation.
How have you then taken that through to a construction setting since joining Karma? Perhaps we can talk through a few projects.
I think that the fire service is very male dominated. We do have a few females, and so that comes with its own issues. I think I work with a small watch group of guys. I've been working for 7 years. There's been a core that have been the same. We've had a few new ones turn up and a few people disappear. But I'd like to think I've got a good relationship with those guys. There's me and another manager. So he's my manager. He's a watch manager. I'm a crew manager. And then we've got a crew of 5. I'd like to think that being able to communicate and not losing my temper, and there's obviously moments of conflict on the watch. And so you just got to deal with those moments in the right way, that you kind of like don't embarrass people. You have a quiet word on the side. You kind of say, can you, this has become obvious. Can you, we have policies and procedures. This is going against policy. Can you try and change your behavior? We do reviews every 3 months. I feel that on my particular watch, we have a good dynamic. We try and nip things in the bud very quickly if we see there's going to be issues arising. But that's not the same for every watch across the county. And, I've been on watches, on, teams, we call them watches, but they're teams, which is very dysfunctional. And moves have to be made because it's just not working, because there's clashes, and they don't just take it. It's not just on station, it also goes into operational instance, and you can't have that. You need everyone working together as a team, because you've got to rely on the next person.
You've regularly said that our best projects that we have are where we have a direct line of communication openly with the client rather than with an intermediary. Why do you think that is?
Architects don't just have one project, they've got tens. And so when we want information, and if we need it quickly, the architects aren't always able to give it to us immediately, because they've either got to go, we ask the architect asks the client might not be available, might get back to the architect who's also the contractor's administrator, needs to work out fees and what it's going to cost, etc. Then we get the information back, if we're lucky, within 3, 4, 5 days, which just has a knock-on effect. If we're wanting that quite quickly, then that just doesn't work for us. Direct interaction with the client, generally you get information immediately, decisions made, you tell them, we need to do this, it's going to cost this much, it's going to have this impact on the program, what do you want us to do? they're already aware of it. They've been told straight from the horse's mouth. They know that it's urgent. They know that it's what it's going to cost them, how it's going to impact it. They make a decision. It's done. As long as it's written down, we do it. And I think a couple of projects where we've had that, it seems to have gone a lot smoother. Now, I'm not saying that we should take out architects from every project. I just think that architects that are more readily available to get that information is a lot more helpful to the contractor, especially when we're on program, because any deviation from that program is costly. I mean, we found WhatsApp groups. I know that everyone's found WhatsApp groups, but they do offer a very quick response. And I know people aren't always fans of them, but I found that particularly like the one project we're on at the moment in Jericho, we get responses off the client representative within 30 minutes. So, and it's just helpful because there's just no hold up in a project where the information's changing all the time. And although we do have an architect working on that project, it's very difficult for them because things are changing on a daily basis. So they might do a drawing of a bathroom and it's changed again. But also what's useful for our builder is that the interior designer we're working with, who's a representative for the client, she sketches over. And so she basically sends us pictures of sketches of how it would look 3D. And for our build and for Sylvester, he absolutely loves it because there's no conviction in how he interprets the pictures because he can see what it should look like. But he knows exactly what he's seeing. So he's got his 2D plans, but he's also got 3D pictures. It works perfect for him. And he's really enjoying himself because it's, he's able to express himself and do some nice, wonderful arches and stained glass windows and all sorts of stuff. And it for him, it is making his life a lot easier. And in fact, the last few projects he's had no architect interaction, and it made his life a lot easier. Saying that, we know that architects are important, and we know that we need them on a lot of the jobs. They bring the vision from our debriefs. We've had internal debriefs, but I would love to have those opportunities to have debriefs with the architects and say, look, you could have done this better. And in turn, they say to us, you could have done this better, or you did this really well. We like this. So you did, these reports that you did were great. It's really helpful. And we have had some feedback, definitely, from architects on things like that. But I think in a world where we're so busy and go on to the next project, it's really hard to make time for those moments. But I think that they're important because obviously we learn, don't we, from our mistakes, we learn from feedback, and hopefully we do. And we move to the next one so we give a better service to the next client. And ultimately that's what we would do. We want, we don't want conflict. We want every project to go well. It makes my life easier. My wife would say it makes me happier. I think that, we all want smooth projects, and hopefully there's going to be projects that inevitably have conflict for one reason or another. But if we can learn from our mistakes, learn from feedback, learn from our good points, then ultimately we should be able to give the best outcome to our clients, because that's who we're working for in there. That's who we want to keep happy. And the best marketing that we can have asked for is word of mouth, isn't it? Is with people saying, yeah, I really recommend that. Karma, they were amazing. Should really use them for the next project.
Let's pick another project. Is their priority to get, and it was that priority management is open conversation about asking them, what is your priority?
We had a situation on a project where the client ordered some bespoke doors. Now, the idea was the doors would match with the floors, and they were told that if they wanted doors that match with floors, they needed to go to this company because this company could make these bespoke doors match the floor. Now, when the doors arrived, which were late, so he was already pretty cross about that. These doors arrived and we started fitting them. They'd been away, and they came back and we'd fitted one door and wanted them to check them out. And they came to look at them, and I had a phone call saying they're horrible. We hate them. We need to get rid of them. I explained to them that they was bespoke and we can't resend them back. So what do you want to do? So we can either get rid of them, but I don't know if we get money back. And then we have no doors. You can go and look for some other ones at a local door supplier. We can install them, but once we've installed, that's it. They're in there. There's nothing we can do about it. There was also another issue on that where what we weren't told is that we were given door liners, which are going to be jambs for pocket doors, which meant that we were going to have to create the pocket door jambs ourselves, which wasn't a small task. This was used to us and to the client, who obviously wasn't impressed with this. We suggested that we could make our own pocket door jambs and keep the doors, because it meant that they can move in, because these were doors for every single room, toilets as well. And so it came to the conclusion that that's what we would do. We would effectively keep the doors, revisit it later on, but get them installed and make our own jammers for the pocket doors and our own door lines, which we did. I mean, for this scenario, we were lucky because we hadn't designed the doors. We hadn't recommended the doors to them. We were the client because we paid for the doors. So we were kind of like out of the loop effectively. But I could only give them the facts. And this particular client liked the information. And I said, you don't like the doors. We can't do anything about that. But what we can do is we can try and resolve it. But these are your options, which is either we carry on and you take the doors and you don't like them. We can completely discard them, get something completely different, which will take time and means you won't be able to move in as quick as you wanted to, but it'll cost you X amount of money for these. But the doors that you've ordered are going to be left on the side, but we don't know if we're going to be able to get the money back. Most in the contract is it no, because they're bespoke. They'll be made specially for those openings. Or we could do this, which is a bit mix and match. And we gave them the information, gave him some time to think about it, but said, we need to know. And so he came back with what he would like to be done, which I asked him to confirm in writing, and we went about doing it. And so although there's still a conflict for him, and yet it's something that's going to be resolved between him and the supplier, they're now living in the house, and it's objectively it's beautiful, and it's functioning, and it's a lovely house. And I think the fact that he was giving, no one shouted at each other, the facts were there, we gave him the facts, we gave him the information, we gave him solutions. I think people like solutions. I don't think people like being told, oh, this is wrong, what you can do about it. I think that he's relying on our expertise to go, well, these are the solutions, these are the options you've got. What would you like us to do?
What does the perfect project look like?
The perfect project looks like a budget agreed with a contingency and no changes to the job. The variations are what slow the job because they add more money, they add more time. We're tendering on a small job, which came through our website, and one of the information I said to them, the advice effectively that Sylvester and I gave to me is that we can give you a price on the budget, it will work, but it'll only work if you don't make any big changes. So fine if you're going to change the floor finishes, but if you're changing the whole layout of a room or a staircase, because we're moving a staircase from one place to another, but if they change their mind to a different staircase location, or if they change their mind on electrics when we've boarded back up again, we have to open up to make changes to adding a new heating system or something. Those are the things, those are the variations, those are the add-ons that could have been avoided if they've been thought about prior to the start of the project. And that's why it's important to have these meetings with the clients where you can offer them ideas. So a good one would be water pressure and heating systems, water tanks. We're finding that modern living, because the water pressures are not strong enough, it's not filling the tank quick enough, which means these water tanks are running out really quickly, and it's a real issue. And so, we recommend getting the water pressure tested for beforehand. You recommend making sure the water tanks are big enough to accommodate their style of living. So if there's 5 or 6 in the house and 3 are in a shower at the same time, they've already got probably 12 minutes of water. If there's 2 people with one shower, they're going to be fine. And it's just thinking about those things that we've learned from past experiences, saying, actually, if you thought about this, because this will have an impact on the way you live. And they don't want to do it again. They don't have to be redoing a whole heating water system because they've not thought about it or we've not given the information that we know. So I think those sort of things are important with clients. 3-phase are a big one as well. A lot of clients are thinking about 3-phase when we're doing air source heat pumps and solar panels, or the lighting, EVs, electric doors, ponds. It all adds up onto the loading of the board. So I think 3-phase is a big one.
Based on everything you've said in your experiences, what is a standard day, if there is a standard day?
Standard day at Karma. There isn't a standard day at Karma really, because it also depends a lot on what projects we've got going on. So I could be site meeting with clients, architects, but I tend to try and do a bit of morning stuff. Would be emails, deal those kind of issues, anything that's come through, anything that I need to respond to. So my role really would be dealing with the site teams on my projects. I do a lot of visiting people, so like intros. So any new clients, we'll try and go around and visit them and tell them who we are. So up until recently, we didn't have a and doing admin for us as much. So we now have an administrator, so we'll try and give a lot of the admin to her. But up to that point, I was doing quite a lot of the admin, payroll, all the cost tracking. My days were very busy and my evenings were very busy. Yeah, and then I do every once a month, I do a Constructing Excellence breakfast where we go and meet up with lots of different professionals within the construction industry, whether that be architects, PQSs. There will be contractors for M&E, contractors for the specific, like for air conditioning. I'm just trying to think else I met. There'll be other project managers from other companies. There's planning officers. There's all sorts. And so they're a really good opportunity to develop a relationship really and go, right, I've got an issue. This person I've met, I really like what they can do. Let's see if they can help us. And then develops a relationship and they remember you and they use you and vice versa. So that's good. And then, but my days, I try and plan them out. I even sometimes try and get a gym session if I can. But I would say 90% of the times that I've gone to the gym, in my lunchtime, I've had to leave to then go and do something. Like I'll have to go off and deal with an issue. And then we have a real issue with planning and parking in Oxford. And it takes a lot of my time arranging permits and planning issues and dealing with just a lot of admin on that side. And I am trying to slowly, I've set up an account now so I can pretty much sign off to Andrea and let her deal with that. But the amount of times I spent with parking fines, because we had an issue on the last job where we fell out with the county council and over parking because they suspended the parking to the train station. I must have spent hours and hours and hours dealing with parking issues. And so it could just change in a day, in an instant really. I think I've got a plan and it changes. And other days I do have, I could spend the whole day at home just doing my laptop work and it's lovely. But I do actually like getting out and about and seeing people. I don't like being at home all day. I feel that I'm quite productive in short bursts of maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I can get a lot done. And I want a break, and I'd want to go and see a site or do something, and then come back. But it's not uncommon for me to have 50 to 70 phone calls a day. I generally get phone calls. We've got 6 sites, so any issues, they generally phone me. If there's an issue, they phone me. So it'll be suppliers, accounts, teams. We've got three kind of teams, I guess. We've got Sylvester who runs the Polish team. We had Danny who's kind of running the Brazilian guys who are a lot of our labour, another job. And then we've got Ben that runs another sort of team which are mainly, I would say, British based. And so we generally kind of split our sites up and we have 3 separate teams. It's all over the place. There's just lots going on all the time. And I quite like it. I do like a bit of structure, but I do also like the unknowns as well coming.
Have you, through the year and the clients that you've worked with, have they always had a positive experience?
We don't tend to get, I think people expect us to do a job that we're paid to do, so we don't tend to get feedback. We just get negative. If we get it wrong, we get feedback. Luckily, I don't thrive on needing people's affirmation. I think the best feedback we got was from the client on a recent project where we had 2 bits of feedback. One was she has a high-end furniture maker that came in with a couple of pieces for her. And he said that the house that we built was one of the best that he's ever seen in terms of the standard of work, the finish, etc., which was a really nice bit of feedback. And then during that job, she brought in a project manager with a recommendation from her brother, because there's a lot of items within the build that were out of our scope. And I didn't necessarily have a grasp on it because it wasn't part of our contract. And so she brought him in, worrying that they weren't all going to come together. And so we worked with them quite closely, and he kind of worked for about 6 weeks, and he just said to the client, look, well, he said from week 1, I don't need to be here because everything's under control. You just need to give the information to Paul, to myself. And once I was given the information, I knew what was going on, and the decision he made, it was fine. But he fed back about 6 weeks later, so saying that he really enjoyed working with Karma because we had a grasp on what needed to be done. Nothing was too difficult. We didn't stand in his way. We had a word to collaboratively rather than against him. We had the interest of the client was the main focus for us. And that's what we told the client, not going anywhere. If you've got any issues, don't just grab someone randomly to come and sort it out. We will come and sort it out for you. We're here for you. We built it to stand to what, the architect spec. just hopefully what you wanted, and we're here for you. And you're anything, any issues, any changes, just give us a shout. We'll pop down. Like it's not a big deal. We want to work with you, and hopefully we'll get some more getting feedback like that. In her friends come to the house, will be interested in us. We'll get some work that way, word of mouth. And already we've been approached by the neighbour to do some work for them, which is good. So I would say that feedback. I think feedback in this industry, positive feedback is hard to come by. I think the clients very much are always happy with the build that we do, but they don't necessarily express it. Not like sending us a bouquet of flowers and cards saying. I think they just a lot of time we're doing what we're paid to do.